July 4th, we had a youth camp here, which was organized by him, and his whole family is in education. Of course, they're well educated, but they're also in the education. So Ramsamooj here runs a music school here, there in New York City, and he brought, he collaborated with Center for Indian Studies and Pandit Ramsamooj to have this 4th of July, and I think on campus this was the first parade of 4th of July. We had a parade and we had a yagya about the freedom and independence. And you can see there's Pandit Ramsamooj. But the latest one is really, I just visited just a couple of weeks ago, or 2 weeks ago. His school in New Hampshire, and some of course, the students are here, that he's truly dedicated to education, and education not just for the sake of just teaching, giving knowledge, but really helping people to earn knowledge and keep it. And something that I wanted to show you the dedication. I did not know. He's so dedicated. You know, I am very dedicated. I really normally think I'm very dedicated, but I'm nowhere close to his dedication. So I learned there's something that he has been doing for over 2 months that I did not know. Is that he gets up at 5. He starts from here at 5 a.m. and drives to Manchester, where many of the students are there. Then he parks his car there and picks up the bus. So he becomes a bus driver after that. Picks up all the students, takes them to school by 8 o'clock, and then he teaches the whole day in a decent. Of course, there are some people like Karen Cabral and there is another teacher, Diane Gilbert, who are helping. But mostly he is in charge and he teaches. And then he drives them back, parks the car, parks the bus there, and picks up the car and comes here. So it is really, I mean, by the time he gets here, it's already more than 14 hours of his day. So that really is a dedication. I also want to just give you some background as to where he's coming. Of course, the family is very important. Families have a lot of education to impart. But he also helped organize the International Biennial Conference of the World Association of Vedic Studies in 2010, and it was largely his initiative, largely his leadership. And as you can see, that those are some major. I don't have time to really give all the introduction, but all powerful people in Trinidad were there. One important person that I will identify a little bit later is. But before I do that, I want to tell that, you know, what a wonderful country. It's full of culture, education, integration, multicultural, everything. And I learned that there is this gentleman here sitting. I think he's a medical doctor. He's practicing medical doctor, Parasuram. And then in the evening he becomes a musician. And you know, of course, he sang Ramcharitmanas, which is a group of a huge book of poems that describes one of the epics of India, which happens to be near my hometown. So I was very influenced, and you can see Panditji was introducing that. But the person I wanted to recognize was Panditji's guru. We're talking about guru's guru, and that is Professor Adesh, who is, how old is he now? 75. And even though he has some medical difficulty, but he came and he was very proud of being there, and I have seen many of the influences that he has had. But most important thing is Panditji's great book, the hospitality of Trinidad, I think you can never forget. Although I did not like this, what was this, Panditji? Avocados.
Oh, avocado.
Avocados is his favorite, and it's not my favorite, but he always is offering people, and it was, it is a family affair. So this was done at his home, his mother's home, and we are so grateful to his mother, Sukadiya Ramsamooj, Sukadiya Ramsamooj, because they welcome. You know, this is the part of this. This is Professor R.P. Singh from JNU in India, of course myself, and this is Swami. What's his Yeah, I think Yogatmanan, Yogatmanan from India. And there were many people in the conference who were camping at their place, and they were just getting food and stay and everything. So it's really great hospitality they have, and I'm so grateful that his mother is able to join us here today. With those brief remarks now, I would like to invite Pandit Ramsamooj to give his
Shall we all sit straight? Shall we close our eyes? And let's have our chant that will be led by the students of AVI. Begin.
O Supreme Being, cause of all manifestation in the universe, source of existence, intelligence, and bliss, we meditate upon your sin-destroying, adorable nature. May you illuminate and inspire our intellect. Peace, peace, peace.
Thank you very much. May you illumine and inspire our intellect. That is the focus of education. I want to recognize my mom here, my brothers, my sister-in-law, and every one of you else. We are all on this journey to learn and to know. I'm here to tell you how my dad, Acharya Ramsamooj Arya, influenced my early education in a manner that has contributed into the development of the super-accelerated learning theory. The super-accelerated learning theory has been a product of the lifelong learning experience and work of Pandit Ramsamooj, and the originator and father of SOL. I just could not remember who wrote that. I think it is either Maureen Hall or Dr. Singh. So thank you for clarifying that. It was Dr. Maureen Hall who has written that. This unique educational theory has been the result of my exposure to the British, the American, and the Indian models of education during my student life. In my early years, the experience gained from the exposure my father, Acharya Ramsamooj Arya, gave me with respect to the learning process embedded in the Indian educational model has been life-transforming and profoundly insightful. As a sugarcane farmer, uneducated by Western standards, dropped out of school at age 10, worked in the fields thereafter, yet had the ability to establish his own village school, Part-2, and I know what he struggled to get that school going for years and years, how many times it stopped, how many times it continued, but he was determined to have the school carried on. Actually, Carolina Hindi School was the first school of this type to be established in Trinidad and Tobago. The first in Trinidad and Tobago, where he was the only teacher, teaching several classes or levels of Hindi, Sanskrit and philosophy, multiple disciplines at the same time. He was self-motivated, self-taught, and self-inspired, a lifelong learner, and had many educational achievements to his credit. He was the first Acharya of the Arya Pratinidhi Sabha of Trinidad and Tobago, a licensed marriage officer, head, and actually, when he was interviewed by the Ministry of National Security for his license as a marriage officer, one of my students that I taught in high school was the guy who came to interview him. And that, at least, I remember that it was not difficult thereafter for him to have that license. Because knowing my dad, my student obviously would have, recommended him highly. Head of the APS Board of Education and a prominent officer of the Hindi Education Board of Trinidad and Tobago. He was amongst the first few people in the country to have passed the advanced level General Certificate of Education examination from the University of London. And in those days, for a Pandit to have such academic qualification was not heard of. Having not attended traditional school, his teaching methodology was unadulterated by Western influences and was portrayed exactly the way it was taught to him by his teacher. Having first-hand interaction, information and exposure on the Indian model of education from him and later my guru, Professor H.S. Adesh, has influenced me tremendously in the formulation of the super accelerated learning theory. This presentation will identify components of the Indian model as demonstrated by my father and how they have influenced me in the development of the SALT theory and education model. First, I want to give you a little idea of the components of the Vedic model of education. And some of you must have heard before that my dad was a prominent Arya Samajist that held very dearly the principles that is enshrined in the Vedas. This is something that I have learned from his experience and others teachers' experience, that mantras, and you have heard the students of AVA chanting the Gayatri mantra, which is the mantra sounds that were designed to stimulate the brain in rapid learning. So these are some of the elements or components that you would find in the Vedic model. Mantras or sound. And knowledge and learning is sound-based. You have to pay attention. You have to listen to the Shrutis. You have to be engrossed in the music and the sound in order for you to elevate your consciousness to a level where you can get into rapid knowing. Yoga, mental conditioning. This is one of the biggest problems that we have today in education. Our children in school are not being conditioned to learn. Yoga helps in that conditioning, which we can find being developed here at the Center for Vedic Studies. Asana, postures. You have to sit straight. You have to breathe properly. So postures have an important role to play in this model. Relaxation and meditation. Active memory and recall. Sutras, mnemonics. Dr. Maureen Hall talked a little earlier of how using mnemonics can help in memory and recall. You know, in the AVA school, I have used a mnemonic called smell red corns. And smell red corns identify every single biological system that we have in the human body. You know, the skeletal, muscular, etc., etc. Learning in an altered state of consciousness, and this is where I think what we're doing through SALT is very different from all other educational models, is that if you are engrossed in learning with the sound, with the words, etc., you get into a semi or an altered state of consciousness, and learning in that state allows information to go directly into your long-term memory, and in so doing, you do not have to do much homework, which students would love if you do not have to do much homework, nor revision, because what is happening is that that information is in your long-term memory and you will forever be able to recall it. And it is a whole brain stimulating learning process. A little about the whole brain. We got two hemispheres, the left and the right. The left deals with logic, sequence, calculative, linear processing, static sounds. The right deals with intuitiveness, randomness, emotions, parallel processing, musical sounds. This learning exercise involved both hemispheres of the brain simultaneously. Now, the Vedic model of education, which is the Indian model, is a whole brain learning model. The model of education that we use today is primarily left brain oriented. And we are losing a lot of students in school. Some of you would know that those who are teachers, you would find that intelligent kids are not paying attention in class. And they find all the excuse to disrupt the class. And because the mode on which that education is being presented is not stimulating to their right hemisphere. But if you give them to draw, if you give them sound and you act out things or bring dance in and all those kinesthetics, you'll find, oh, kids become great learners again. So this is what the Vedic model allows. It allows for whole brain and the super accelerating learning theory school model, or the American Vivekananda Academy, which is the school model of that theory, has its foundation in the Vedic model. So I'm going to give you the definition. It's a mouthful of the super accelerated learning theory. And then later on, I'm going to talk about my dad, his learning strategies, and how that encouraged me and how it helped me in developing this theory. The super accelerated learning theory states that acquisition, assimilation, and processing of information of various disciplines holistically, and that's a key word, through all organs of actions and perceptions in the information superhighway with the use of whole brain and a disciplined mind in a semi or altered state of consciousness. It is based on the psychological development and the physiological function of the biological brain through various neurological pathways in respect to learning, application, storage, and retrieving of information in and from its long-term static memory instantaneously. And this is where students have to be taught how to learn. Acharya Ramsamooj Arya influence on soul. And this is why I'm going to talk a little bit. First, early life, my early life, family, and social responsibility. As a child growing up, I want you to know that I was, in fact, can remember attending my dad's school at age 3. Actually, at age 3 was the time I met Brahmachari Ushabodh Arya, who became Pandit Ushabodh Arya and who is now Swami Ved Bharati. He was one of the first Arya Samaj missionary who was passing through, who was sent from India to the Caribbean. And when he was 16 years old, and I was just about 3, I was able to meet him through the work and connections of my dad. At age 3, I was in his Pathshala. And actually, he taught me something about how to read. I first learned to read Hindi, not English. And in that process, he took the Ramayana We used to have satsang. And with little kids, 3 years old, 5 years old, would sit around. And I can remember him telling me that you got, while your tongue is speaking the syllable, your mind should be reading the next syllable. Your mind should be picking up the next syllable, so when you come to the next syllable, your tongue is ready to say it. And in this way, you are ahead of the syllables in the word. Now, how many of you read this way, where we read ahead, thinking, and then saying? And this gives for continuity. So he was involved in connectivity with all aspects of life. Now, I can remember we had to go to school. But before we went to school, we had to go and get some K-top or some grass for the cows early in the morning, in the dew. Then we have to ride our bicycle to school. Then when we come home, we got a whole list of activities thereafter. And sometimes we wondered when would we get time to study. So there was social work that he has introduced us to, on which our family happens to be very involved in social work now. Religious work in which he was involved in, and I think most of my brothers are involved in religious work together with their spouses. Cultural work he was involved in. He was involved in the sugarcane fields, and boy, on weekends, when we were a little older, we had to be there. We had to be involved in the marketplace, and that's one place where my mom has grown to love. You know, take the vegetables, take whatever, go to the market, and even at this age, sometimes in Trinidad, I tell her, why do you have to go to the market? And he said, boy, you shut up. He said, when I go to the market, I meet all my old friends. And this is an excuse for me to go to the market, is to take some oranges or take some other, vegetables, etc. It is an excuse to go to the marketplace so that she can meet her friends. And, in the next year or two, she would be 80 years old, quite healthy. Because connectivity, connecting with people, connecting with your past allows you to grow younger. And therefore, I thought at that time, and now, that getting hands-on experience in the fields, especially in agriculture, and seeing things grow, seeing how things behave, you are able to use that as a field in which you can learn almost any and everything. How many of you think that in growing a plant, how much physics you have to learn, how much chemistry you have to learn, how much, biology and economics, everything has to be centered around that particular exercise. And that's the purpose of education. You cannot learn in isolation. Every school that we come to, even UMass, we come in here, you got to do this course in chemistry, right, Dr. Singh? You have to do advanced algebra. You're looking for admitting students, and you're looking to see what AP courses they have done. We have to learn to live and learn in connection with everything else. And the biggest question that our students ask, what am I going to do with this information? Haven't you asked that? Why do I have to do calculus? How is it going to help me in life? You have to find a sense of purpose. So hands-on learning, and this is what the SALT model has got as one of its components. Hands-on learning. And that, I have to say, has been a contribution of my dad being a cane farmer, I having to go through all the toils, etc., and therefore knowing about farm equipment and mechanics and all those things. I can remember when I was at the UWI, I was doing a course on crop production, It's an agriculture course, crop production, and there was a professor there who was teaching crop production. And we went on a field trip